Hello, my name is Tyler Huzowski, and I am part of the Mu chapter, Phi Beta Mu in Northeast Ohio. I teach at Lakeview Middle School and High School, and I am privileged to be here today with composer Mike Kamuf. He has a great background in Ohio and does a lot of great composition for jazz ensembles, middle school band, high school band. So, Mike, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Tyler.
So a little bit of background about yourself. When did you get started in band, and what instrument did you play? And tell us a little about your public school experience and collegiate experience.
Yeah, sure. I wasn't able to start playing until seventh grade. Went to Catholic grade school and high school in Cleveland, and where I grew up. And so I wasn't allowed to be in band until that point. So I started in seventh grade. Trumpet was kind of the instrument of choice. My right before that, I'd say about a year or so before I started really seriously playing in band, my parents took me to a Maynard Ferguson concert.
Hmm.
So that kind of sealed the deal on being a trumpet player for me, at least, or at least attempting to play trumpet. My godfather was a trumpet player, so he lent me a horn to get started. It was just kind of meant to be. I was part of a great high school music program outside of Cleveland. Padua Franciscan High School had at that time. I can't speak to it now. I'm assuming it's got a good program there now, but in the 70s and 80s, there was a great band director there, a Dana School of Music grad. But we'll get to the Dana School of Music in just a second. His name was Wayne Miller, and he had a wonderful program there, and I was able to. I thrived under him in that program. A lot of great opportunities to do honors bands and things like that along with him. And then also he kind of turned the jazz band over to me once he saw that I was doing a little bit of writing. So I'd always get some time to rehearse my charts every rehearsal. And once I started bringing things in, so that was very good thing. I also wrote a little bit for our school masses that we would have. We had a brass ensemble that played there. So I kind of started getting my feet wet around that time with writing. I decided to go, I was headed to another college in Ohio. Well, I won't talk about which college that was. And I met a gentleman by the name of Tony Leonardi, who ran the jazz program at Youngstown State from the late 1960s, about 1969, I guess, till his passing in the early 2000s. And he was just a life force, as you know, Tyler. And I never had at that point in my life met somebody who was that passionate about music. And it was just I wanted to pick his brain and learn from him. That was my takeaway from working with him as a high school student. So I went there, met Soto Pellegrini, one of the great trumpet pedagogues of the country at that time, and I got a chance to study with him, and it was just a great time to be there. And I continued writing. I wasn't real prolific as a student at Dana, at the Dana School of Music at Youngstown State. Did a little bit here and there. It was probably I'd say I churned out in my first couple of years. I maybe just churned out a chart or two. I was kind of taking a lot of things in. Dave Ravello, who teaches at the Eastman School of Music now, was another fellow Dana grad. He was a senior when I was a freshman, and we kind of hit it off, and we talked a lot. We'd exchange recordings, kind of pick each other's brains about what we were listening to and all that kind of stuff. So I had informal training with Dave, formal training with Tony and Pelly, and the great faculty at the Dana School of Music, and a wonderful gentleman by the name of Sam D'Angelo, who was a great writer who was part-time faculty at Dana. He really helped me a lot with my writing and made time, even when I wasn't a classroom student of his, he would make time for me and help me. So a lot of great mentors and a lot of great experiences there. So that's how I kind of got started with my undergrad. My graduate work, once I moved to Maryland. I moved to Maryland in 1992 after I'd worked a little bit in Ohio, and then my wife and I moved down here. I got a chance to study with Anthony Maiello at George Mason and did my master's in conducting with him. I neglected to say earlier that my bachelor's, I did two degrees basically. I ran two different tracks. So I did music education and jazz performance, and I wasn't in a hurry to get out of Dana. I just kind of just tried to absorb as much material as I could, and I was having a great time as a student there, so I really wasn't in a hurry to go. Plus, I was doing a lot of playing on the side as a trumpet player, so well, I wasn't in a hurry, and I took it all in, and I think it all worked out pretty well for me. So
That's fantastic.
yeah.
How about thinking back to any pieces of music from your middle school or junior high days that may have inspired you to write at this level, especially and influence what you're doing now?
Yeah, not particularly in my first couple of years because it was a pretty much an elementary band experience. When I had that seventh and eighth grade experience before I went to high school, it was at an elementary school, it wasn't in a middle school. So, and the music, the director was not the most patient or knowledgeable person we ended up with. So it's a politically correct way of saying something there. But he was okay. But I really, as I said, I thrived at Padua High School with Wayne Miller. He had a love for the classics of wind band lit. So right away I was playing Holst and Vaughan Williams and Nellie Bell and people like that. And then he was also bringing in, like James Curnow was, he was an emerging name at that point in my career. And so we did a lot of his work. And I remember being fascinated with one Curnow piece in mind. And of course, the name escapes me right now. Um, very something on an early American folk tune that had come out through Jensen at that point. And I was fascinated with the textures of it. So I, I would borrow scores from him and learn how the jazz ensemble stuff was hard because a lot of at that point in time, a lot of scores for the jazz ensemble stuff was being uh, written in a condensed form where it's just one line. So if something came in and it was actually a full score, I would snag it, or when he wasn't looking, I would take his scores and put it back and do some informal score studying on the fly. But he was really good with letting me borrow things from the library, and I would study the scores and not didn't always have a recording of things, so I would go over to the piano and try to figure things out. And so it was a lot of self-taught things going on at that point. But the classics kind of influenced me in my writing for band and I do orchestra writing too. So it's the foundation was laid pretty well early for me, and Holston and Copeland and Vaughan Williams really speak to me a lot. It's still, even after all these years, one of my favorite recordings is Fantasia on a Theme by Thomas Tallis with the St. Louis Symphony from that time era of growing up in the 80s. So that's the music that speaks to me and influenced me a great deal.
That's great. I think it's great, you said the classics and some of the composers of that era. I think a lot of times us, newer directors and programs we're so involved with playing the newest music, which of course is great, as you know,
Right.
but those classics and exposing the students to those composers of that era, I think is so valuable still to this day.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too that I think young directors get caught up in too is, and I don't think the real young directors, I'm not sure they realize this because they didn't live through it, but like
Yeah.
there's never been a time like this in music publishing history. There's never been a time where you have access to so much great music. A lot of smaller publishers are publishing stuff that the bigger publishers won't touch, but that doesn't mean that they're not great pieces of music. It's not going to be profitable for those larger publishers to handle them. But then there's also a lot of self-publishing going on too. So that's really pretty cool. So, it's, and of course with technology, sky's the limit with everything. So it's a pretty unique time. So I think, yeah, young directors need to make sure that they are incorporating that. I think I agree with you on that. But it's also an exciting time because
Yes.
we're getting all this great lit happening, and access is immediate with PDF files and everything. So it's not like you have to order it and wait for it to show up from a distributor anymore. You can just get it, immediate. So pretty
Yeah,
cool. It's a pretty cool
absolutely.
time to be a music educator. Yeah.
Such a good point. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know you taught for a long time, and so how did you get started writing for younger and developing bands? I'm sure
Um,
teaching had something to do with it.
yeah. So I was in the classroom uh, for 31 years. I taught 1 year in Ohio, and then, like I said, my wife and I moved down here to Maryland in the early 90s. I did elementary for 3 years, and then 27 years at the middle school, a middle school. I stayed at
Wow.
one middle school. And I didn't do a lot of writing for my groups at first because we were working on our masters, and then we started a family, and so I really wasn't doing a whole lot of that. And then the jazz thing kind of took off for me writing wise. Like I got picked up by Bellwin, which is now part of Alfred, and then Brian Balmages picked up a couple of things of mine at FJH before they discontinued the jazz catalog right after I started writing for them. And I did a couple things for Dean Sorensen at shows too, so that was fun. And then this is an Ohio connection. I was at OMEA in 2013, and I was there with Bob Phillips, who's at the time was ASTA, American Strings Teachers Association president and writer at Alfred. He was a editor and Bellwin string editor, and we were at there was an Alfred booth there that year, and he said, "Hey, I heard you're exclusive with us now," and I'm like, "Yeah," and he goes, "And I hear you're a middle school orchestra director." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Write me a piece." So so I wrote him a piece, and that's how that. And then I got a couple more assignments after I wrote that piece, and then I had written a few things for my school kids, but it really wasn't it wasn't a lot, and it wasn't I wrote a couple jazz band things, a couple band things. It wasn't. I had when I was doing elementary, I wrote a few pieces for that group for those groups just because I had to there wasn't I couldn't find what I needed for a particular group to make them shine. So very limited, but my experience doing that. But then this is how the band thing got started, hot and heavy for me. Um, this was like early 2014. It's, a friend of mine who was a colleague here and a former student of a really good friend of mine contacted me. He used to be in this area, but he lives in near Scranton, PA now.
Hmm.
He contacted me and asked me to write a piece for their PMEA district concert band, middle school concert band. I'm like, you want me to write a piece for your middle school honors band? I'm like, you realize you could have somebody way better than me do this for the same price. Do you realize that kind of thing? And he said, no, we want you to do it. So I wrote this piece called Honore, which got picked up by Alfred. And at the time, I asked Ralph Ford, the band writer, if he would take a look at the score, and he took a look at the score, and he gave me a Bellwin template file, which he wasn't supposed to do, and I dumped it into the template file, and I did one edition for the commissioning group, and I sent it off, and I said, the same night I sent it off to Alfred, and I sent it to George McGaw, who was the band person, band editor on the Bellwin side of the company. And I had met George at Midwest, and we had talked a few times. So long story short, he accepts it. And he said, call me when you have a half hour to talk. And I call him. We talk about the piece. I get a history of the company. That conversation was about almost 4 hours long. And then I got 3 more assignments out of it.
Wow.
Immediately. And I've been writing for the concert band ever since. So that's kind of how that all just kind of unfolded for me. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
As you continue to write for younger bands, what do you find that the greatest challenge is?
Keeping everybody engaged, passing percussion especially, without overwriting. That's really hard to do because you don't want it to sound in the words of Tony Leonardi, like they're building a house back there. But you want to make sure that it's meaningful stuff that's happening back there, and so that's a huge challenge. And then I think pacing, making sure that brass players get a chance to take their horn off their face. Especially everybody should get a chance to take their horn off their face at some point. It shouldn't be like if possible. When you're writing pop stuff, it's not always easy for those baseline instruments for you to do that, but you still have to be kind of cognizant of that as a writer. And then making sure the melodic material gets passed around. That's another Ralph Ford thing. Ralph told me that. He's like, I ask kids why they like this piece and why they like that, and well, I don't get a chance to play a melody, or I don't, it's like so. I got that piece of advice really early on, so I try to make sure that I'm I keep that in the back of my mind as I'm doing the orchestration part of it. It's it drives some of it, drives some of what I'm doing, but I also have to hear what's going on there too. If I hear it, it feels right, I do it. And if not, but those I think those are some pretty big challenges as I'm writing, especially in that grade 0.5 to 2 range. It's you want to make sure that it's as we as writers, as we get a chance to like do more, and in the mid-level grade, like grade 3 and up, it's a little bit more. There's a little bit more flexibility, I think, and with the orchestration. But when you're only dealing with like one flute part, or like one clarinet part, your hands are a little bit tied there, so you have to make sure that um, you're just keeping everybody's interest level and the pacing of it, just kind of keeping it all in check as you're writing. So
How do you balance the need to be creative and keep what you had in mind as a composer, but not have everything start to sound the same? Especially for younger groups, I go online and listen to pieces, and to me, everything nowadays, there's so much stuff that's in a minor key and just driving percussion rhythms, and it's hard to find pieces. Just for me, I'm a melody person.
right,
I can hear, remember a melody, and then transfer that and give that to my students.
yeah. So for me, I guess the melody is sacred to me when I'm writing something. So there has to be a tune. There has to be cognitive, not cognitive, blatant themes that are happening. Like, so that kind of drives everything too. What was the initial part of the question? I'm losing. I
How do
lost.
you, yeah, no, how do
I'm
you
focused
find,
on the end of the question. Sorry.
yeah, no, no, how do you balance the need to
Oh,
be creative and keep in mind what you had?
yeah, yeah. So it's I guess I guess that the melodic content does drive it, but you're also like you're just trying to stay true to what you're hearing in your head. I think because I taught middle school for a long period of time, I think that I have go-to sonorities, not sonorities, but orchestrations in my head that like okay, this works. So I think when the mood of the piece is happening in such a way that I hear things like along those lines. So I try to stay true to what I'm hearing, but keeping the melodic content in the forefront. Am I answering the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
so.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. It's yeah, it's always uh, a thing for me to make sure that there's something singable happening, right? And that singable part transfers, and then like I just want to make sure again that everybody's engaged. That whole thing of everybody gets to play some melodic material is huge for me too. Like I want to make sure that you know with the exception of arranging a pop tune again.
Mm,
Because that again, your hands are tied kind of with bass line things and stuff like that.
sure.
So even though I'm able to do that sometimes, and it works out pretty well. But even in pop tunes, I try to do that as well. But I think just passing everything around makes it um, a lot more palatable rather than just the flutes and the trumpets always getting the melody, and the middle of the band always getting counter melodies or whatever, or accompaniment figures and a bass line. I try to just divvy it up. Yeah,
Kind
as
of a
much as
follow-up to that, do you in a piece, do you write things with specific learning outcomes in mind to
um,
purposely be published like this is a grade 1.5, focusing on these concepts, or do you?
mhm. I think the parameters of the series that you're writing for and the grade level that you're writing for kind of drive it already, because a little bit, because like if you're writing a grade 0.5, you're probably reinforcing the first six notes that are being taught, right? So, that's that's important. So then that we want to make sure we do that. But all of the grade levels themselves, the publishers all have guidelines, and you can use these rhythms. These rhythms are okay. These ranges are okay, kind of thing. So the publishers' guidelines for the writers are kind of driving like what we can
Mm.
do. Do I specifically do that? Sometimes. I just finished a piece last week for Ventura County, California Middle School Honors Band, which I'm going to be the director of this year, coming up in February. And they also commissioned me to write a piece. So I wrote a piece, and it was funny. When I started writing it, I didn't write down what I heard in my head, and I let it go for a couple of days. And I know better than to do that. And what I was hearing a sequence like basically in 15,
Huh.
like at bar 4, 4, 4, and then a bar 3. Well, when I went back to that idea, I couldn't hear it like that again. So I heard it in 7. So I heard a 4, 3, 4, 3. So I wasn't hearing quite the same thing. So so that for this group, that concept of changing time signatures and changing fields is inherent in the piece, and that's not something that you can necessarily do with a younger band.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying. So this is kind of coming into the 2.5, almost a 3. But at the same time, I couldn't do that at the grade 1 level because we're not going to be doing much mixed meter, if at all, any mixed meter stuff like that. So my concept as for that tune, even though the concept changed as I was going along, works very well for this grade level, and I would not be able to do that for another grade level. So do the learner outcomes drive it? Sort of. I mean, but I think the publisher guidelines are ones that really kind of keep the writers focused on the different concepts.
Yeah, that's great. Interesting perspectives. Two more.
Okay.
Are you mostly self-published or commercially published?
I'm mostly with Alfred,
Okay.
I'm exclusive with them. I kind of have lost track of the amount of products I have through them right now. I think it's up over 130. And so that's my obviously my bread and butter there in the publishing industry is with them. But like I said, I also have some things published through FJH and shows, also UNC Jazz Press as well. But I do self-publish a few things, and some of those are available for the JW Pepper. Others are just available like if people ask, "Hey, I heard this arrangement. Can I get this from you?" And it's like, yes. So I do that as well. But that's Alfred is pretty much, and the company's been very good to me. It's a family type operation. It's been in the Manis family for since its inception in the 1920s, and I'm just very fortunate to be a part of it. And it's a wonderful team. I just love it. Love everybody that I work with. It's just great people.
That's
So,
great.
yep.
Um, Last topic, one of my favorite topics. We've been fortunate to work together on several commission projects,
Mhm.
and for somebody who's maybe never done it before, I think people should realize how relatively easy the process is to get going, at least
Yeah.
work together with a composer and even expose your students to working with a composer. So if you could expand upon that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I've actually been involved on both sides of this. I've commissioned some writers, Brian Balmages, Timothy Broach, to name a couple. And then of course I've been on the other side as the writer, and it is very rewarding whether you're the band director or the student or you're the writer. Um, and it's a lot of fun, and all you basically have to do is you have to have some things in mind before you contact the writer. You want to contact the writer yourself. Usually everybody has a website, or you can some publishers you can contact the writers through the publishing website, but most, and in this day of social media, it's really easy to find people too. But you want to make sure that you have some sort of idea of your own budget that you have before that you start talking with them. You should have a timeline, or you should or if the timeline doesn't matter to you, that's part of it too. Like you have to be flexible around the writer's schedule sometimes. I had to turn down things as a writer that I get asked to do because people want, you know, like immediately, or they want it in a time window that I can't do. It's like I'm sorry, I'm not your guy for this. It's like I would love to do it, but you know, so it's you have to be if you really want that writer, you have to be willing to, you know, go with that writer's schedule kind of thing. But you just, you know, you reach out and you contact them. I don't usually work with contracts. I know other writers do. I have worked with writers that use contracts. And I got asked one time to a contract, and I wrote up a contract for it, actually a couple of times. Um, because the school district wanted something signed or whatever because I was doing it. But it's pretty simple to do. You find out if they want to use a contract or not, and then you just kind of start an open dialogue about you know, again, grade level, timeline, length of the arrangement. Oftentimes when I do a concert band thing like I just did, this was fun because it was open-ended. I could do whatever I wanted kind of thing. But sometimes it's not necessarily that. Sometimes the person has something in mind that they want. Um, and if that idea speaks to you as a writer, then that's great. And or it may be something that you go as a writer, I'm not interested in that at all. So maybe maybe this is for somebody else. I haven't really had that happen, but I'm sure that if there's a I'm sure there's going to be a request somewhere. That's not for me. Um, but uh, but so you just kind of have to have an open mind and just be a little patient with the writer because they're probably involved in other projects as well. And like I said, it's very rewarding when I was a teacher and had writers come in and work with my students. Uh, it was pretty cool to see because they had played my things, but I'm just their band director. So, you know, but to have the living person in the room with, you know, that created this beautiful piece of art, be in the room with them, is pretty amazing. And then on the flip side, for me, it's also really, you know, as the writer showing up and hearing it, it's like, holy cow, this is great. Um, I wrote a chart this last year for a group that played Midwest last year, and they premiered it, and it got published through Alfred this year. It's called Boss City. It's a West Montgomery tune, and just hearing that band play it at Midwest, but it, you know, it's amazing. You know, it's really it kind of brings it full circle. So like again, it's a rewarding experience on both ends. I highly recommend it as an educator. If you haven't done it, to try doing it, reach out to your favorite writer and contact them. You have to have a working budget. Every writer's a little different with pricing, so you have to do some investigation to see if it can be done with your budget or not. So
Great.
yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Mike, for being here today and take the time to do this interview. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. My pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to talk with you.
And finally, you know, where can we find you at before we sign off?
Oh yeah, I'm on the socials. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have a website, MikeKamuf.com. If you're an educator, there's some free resources on there, including my free jazz band warm-ups, which are they're used all over the world.
Yeah, they're great.
Lot of resources there for you to use. I'm on Twitter, but I'm not really on Twitter, so or X or whatever it's called now. So yeah, mostly Facebook and Instagram if people want to connect.
Great.
All right.
Well, thank you
Thanks,
so
Tyler.
much, Mike. Take
All right.
care.
Thank you. Yeah, you too.